All right. Hello, friends. Welcome. This is Full Moon Circle, May 12th, 2025. And I'm beaming in from this very special place in the globe. This is the Yoni Shakti Yoni Nidra Shakti Temple. And so just taking you on a quick little tour. So very exciting. These are the illustrious works of Nilipta Tuli. These are the Dasha Mahavidyas, the 10 wisdom mothers. And there were two more right here hanging out. And there in the back is a work also dedicated to the Dashmahavidyas, although another name might be Mother Mary over there. And this other very large three-panel work is called Angels of Gaza, like this. And so this is a really special place. This is a rest temple. And beaming in today from Gloucestershire, England, and been really having a very beautiful time here, enriched and just sharing lots of receiving healing work and also sharing healing work in the form of yoga nidra meditation, something we just can't do too much of. Resting, healing, healing, resting. That's definitely a vibe. And it's a full moon. It's a full moon portal. And it's always powerful because it's a height of energy. The sun and the moon are in opposite places in the astrological chart and the zodiac. The astrological chart means the sky, you know? And so they're on opposite sides of however you draw that circular or diamond shape or square shaped. And the moon is full and strong, and the tidal pulls are strong, and moon equals the dimension of mind, right? And so our minds are also very full, very pulled in some sort of direction. And of course, the impact of that is going to show up more specifically in your natal chart. So, what is the house and the sign where this full moon is showing up? And this is Sidereal Libra. So, if you're following tropical astrology, the more sort of common Greek origin. If you open up a magazine or something, a digital magazine, it's often going to be this tropical astrology, and that's going to be drawing with a little bit different math in the zodiac in the sky. And sidereal is a little bit older, and the sidereal astrology that I study is Jyotish from the lands of South Asia, the great ancestors that stewarded this practice. And the earliest form really coincides with the early form of the goddess. I've been here in this place quite specifically doing a preparation research work, drawing from the rich library of my friend Uma Dinsmore-Tuli. And, I never did like classical feminist studies. And so I needed some of these works that were written in the 70s and the 80s, these scholars back then who were often white women, who were doing this really important work documenting through archaeology, the remnants of everything from cave paintings to, pottery to imagery and stitching back together this amazing narrative of the goddess. And so I don't know if I have so much to talk about this moon. I don't know. We're just getting in the vibes right now, and we'll see what starts coming through about the moon specifically. But this moon is in sidereal Libra, and that is ruled by Venus, and that is certainly about our goddess. And here I am in the temple of the goddess, sharing with you, these stories and things. So it all comes alive, right? It's just in the weave of whatever we're into in the moment. That's the fun. So I've been here doing this research in preparation for a pilgrimage through the Mediterranean. I've actually already started my Mediterranean pilgrimage. I started it in North Africa, in Morocco, and I heard this very distinct call, this pull to really commune and reconnect with her. And for now, we're just placeholder. We call her just the Great Goddess, and she was this original sacred feminine form that her practice was found throughout the entire Mediterranean, the Balkans, what we might call Eastern Asia, so like Turkey and some of that region, the whole of North Africa, the whole of Southern Europe. And then obviously people moved as well with the ice sheets forming in the northern hemisphere. Guess what? People moved down southward into the Iberian Peninsula and they would have met, you know, her there as well and would have carried her back into the region where I am now. Like this. And so I've shown this whole map of like, all right, you're going to go to me here. First you're going to find me here. And it's time because over the last few years, I've been circling. I've been doing this like circling with her through like North Africa, Iberian Peninsula. Then it like the spiral went a little bit farther last year into Marseille. And so if you're like, oh, Marseille, oh, that's the land of Mary Magdalene, Magdalena. And so last year's pilgrimage was like Magdalena and then to Poland. And in Poland, they are fierce devotees of Black Madonna. Well, Magdalena, Black Madonna were was how she stayed alive when the Christian wave took over and suppressed like this. And so it's really been this very rich thing with these waves, with it. And so finally after this I was bathing in the sacred waters of the Mediterranean and just really feeling this. And she's like, okay, I think you're ready. Like, I think you're in the right place now to really go on my pilgrimage. I want you to, and she gave me this like itinerary. Like, I want you to go to all these places. I said, well, Ma, you have to fund this. We are not, we don't have money. So, but I don't know. It's all happening in the way that it's happening. And so I'm here in the lands of the ancient goddess here of the yew trees, and her practice, her ancient practice is great goddess, the original great goddess, right? Who would become Aphrodite and Hera and Persephone, and then would go on and become Artemis. And even way before the Greeks and the Romans, she was Inanna. She was the Sumerian goddess. She was the goddess at Katohayuk in Turkey. So you just like keep going back and the same goddess showing up in her form and then of course how she expressed through society and how society organized and governed. And her practice was to go in to these ritual caves, so sacred caves for ritual, let's call them ritual caves, where it's all dark, and they would do a dream and rest practice. So it's a lot of light bulbs going off right now for me of like, oh, a lifetime of seeing certain symbols in my meditations and sort of following these little breadcrumb trails, not like scary ones like Hansel and Gretel, but fun ones, you know, and then the Yoga Nidra and the rest and dream practice, and it's all just really coming together. And so I'm here doing my research right now and gathering everything that I need to sort of build the mental framework. And then we're going to take this deep dive through Italy and Malta, which is like her place. That's like her core spiral, and Greece and Turkey. And really just go and be in the rematriation practice and connect to her energies. And we're going to pull these threads into the now, because this is all our practice. This isn't about women, men, wombs, and otherwise. This is a project that is beyond that. This is some ancestor futures kind of thing. This is like the future of our spirituality. And astrologically, I have been saying, that there are some indicators coming up in the transits, the pending transits of May. May is exciting in terms of transits. This moon is one thing, we'll talk about that, situate that, just so that we can like catch the vibes and swim in these beautiful waters. But I think the really lively news that's coming up are some planetary transits that are changing. And what that means is that they were in one part of the zodiac, now they're going to move into another part of the zodiac. So back in your chart, something's about to shift. You've been in one thing. That's going to kind of wrap up, hopefully, with the bow. Karmic completion is always the name of the game, friends. You leave it hanging and you got to wait till the next, 18 years later or 27 years later for some of these outer, slower moving planets to come back around. So finish it up. Every last drop, squeeze it out. Right. So we'll name some of these bigger ones coming up. Jupiter, the nodes are changing signs, Mercury is shifting, Venus is shifting, Sun is shifting. And we know the closer that we get to Sun, those planets are moving faster, like this. The speed with which planets move matters. So next upcoming Jupiter transit is actually going to be very intense because it's moving very fast. So we're gonna be in for some wild rides. It could also indicate like places that have been stuck for us or things that we've really been like locked in can shift, open up, move differently. Astrology, especially the sidereal Jyotish astrology, it is so ornate. There are so many layers, and you're looking at these relationships, whether it's friendships, or enemies, or like who likes to hang out with who, and then yogas, these celestials interacting and influencing. And then also the celestials are like beings, so they have gaze. And they might be gazing at places, so it's sort of endless how much you can look at it. So growing that capacity to just zero in on exactly what you need to look at that time. And that's why one reading of a chart will never be enough. You have to keep looking at it and analyzing and going deeper and asking questions, and you will never come to the limit of it. There's always more. So fascinating. And that's you, right? You will never come to a limit of how much you can grow or heal or develop. But you could stand in the way. You could choose, intense comfort over growth. You could try to put blinders on. You could try to turn your gifts off. And people do that all the time. You can medicate. That's like everybody, dulling the things and turning the things off. You could be scared. And so you're going to turn these sensitivities off, like that. And so, but what is our birthright is, oh, that's so fun. What is our birthright is to have access to our gifts and to not be scared into them getting turned off, and to have support systems and for them to be validated and normalized. And, I had such a beautiful experience today, taking my son, he identifies as male, to a healer that I was seeing also. And I got to tell you, super side note, like healing as a family is rich. That like stuff can move. Because y'all are exchanging stuff all the time, good, bad, and indifferent, So when you like go to the same, witchy healer at the same time, a good like voodoo chiropractor or something, wow, it's really powerful. So yeah, we got the voodoo osteopath here. And we were talking about some symptomatic thing that my child has, and he just normalized it for him, of just like, that's not anything wrong. That's just a lot of something, right? And you're going to have to learn how it's not a matter of control, but containment and focus and balancing in the body. And I was like, I feel like I'm doing good parenting today, because I've decided that I don't want my child to get crushed by the system. We're going to take this alternative education path through this world schooling, homeschooling, which then allows me to teach him to exactly who he is. And that's even deeper than just his interests, and I just felt today, I was just like, this is why you should have confidence in your choices. This is why you should have the guts to do things in the way that your intuition calls you to do it, especially when it's going against the system. And then you have to resource yourself with the like-minded individuals in the support system, that's going to help you take that load like that. And so, you're find the healers that speak to you in that way. Nobody's going to do the work for you. That's not the expectation. You have to do your own work. My child also has to do his own work, but I can still continue to do that deep listening and be that resourceful person that gets the right support in at the right time. So that was so many tangents, I don't even know where we started from. But I do know about this great goddess right now. And it is Venus time. This moon is in Sidereal Libra and Vishaka, not Shakta. Oh yeah, I'm way the hell back. I was talking about just again a little so these ancestors. That was the whole tangent. So the great goddess was worshipped as the triple goddess. And I feel like that got quite reduced to maiden, mother, crone archetypes. Now you come over into these gorgeous ladies here in their geometric form, and you've got 10 aspects of womanhood. Or you're over in the East Asian system, and they're talking about, it's 7 stages of one's lifetime, no matter what gender you are. Like this. And so what we're talking about is cyclic wisdom. Well, where did the ancestors come up with that? They watched the moon. And so she's also known as the moon goddess. And they watch the moon, and then they watch themselves. And they observe the moon, and then they observe themselves, and they observe people through cyclic stages of being and cyclic stages of development, and realize that it's depending on which part of the moon phase you're born under. There's a personality affect. And they really then is so much, it's hundreds of thousands of years of observation. Do not let modern science influence your thinking that our ancient ancestors at 350,000 years ago and 400,000 years ago were imbeciles. It is not the case. Free or decolonize that. Thinking, Cro-Magnon man and Neanderthals and this and that. Honestly, they might be more evolved than we dum-dums nowadays. Let's pause and reflect for a second. We're complete idiots. We make the dumbest ass decisions ever. They had a beautiful spirituality, a oneness, a connection with the nature and the great goddess and the moon goddess and the dream caves, and the ancestors, they were doing just fine. We're out here so just saying, and so they took the math in observation with the design of nature, which is fractal epistemology. And they made the math of just the moon part of astrology. We're not even talking about the other celestials or the houses or the signs or any of the other ornate things. We're just talking about the moon bit and the moon goddess. And okay, what are we going to put some, time frames on this? Definitely all the way in Upper Paleolithic, 30,000, 40,000 before the Common Era, but that couldn't get all super ornate if we didn't have all that data from before that, the earlier ancestors and the other beings on Earth. We cannot exclude, and the little people and the giants and these ones and those ones. So they went fractal as well. 28 moon phases, each one of those can be divided into 4. So you get this very dynamic circle of all of the lunar mansions that align inside the padas, the divisions that align inside of the nakshatras. Later on, planets, celestials will get aligned with those fractal things. So it can get so ornate of like when something is going to activate. And that's part of the predictive end of astrology. You're like, oh, when it comes to the second pada of Vishaka Nakshatra, ruled by Venus or Saturn or Ketu or whomever. Ooh, you're going to get that window of activation. Here's the exact timing to start your business, sign that contract, or maybe it's not a good one, just like you need to be careful. You need to be in prayer. Here's your remedies. But by the way, whenever it's up Shit's Creek without a paddle, the remedy is Shakti, is the goddess. And all these other remedies. But when it's really, really real, Shakti every time. Kali, Durga, wrathful. These amazing ones right here. Oh, let's not leave a golden goddess out of this, That's it. Matara. Yeah, that's who you call on. With this. So the moon goddess, she's our original construct of, kind of like the versions of humans we are right now, a little bit post-Neanderthal. That. But still there's ice sheets, and we're still moving. So what I do in my academic work is bring indigenous traditions into conversation with one another and do restoration work, restoration and preservation. And I know that this is one of those projects right now, except we're going beyond the nameable indigenous groups at this point in time. We're going so far back here because that's the instruction for now. If you have watched any of these moon circles, you have heard me saying this since like December, January. The assignment is dreaming, healing, remembering, resting, creativity. And if you have identified a little skill acquisition thing, you're going to have a little pivot or a deepening into something or another certification, or like, this is excellent time for this because you need to stay focused. You want to get out here with all the hubbubbery, then you're out at the edge of the storm and you will get battered. It's ruthless out in those streets. Now, in my research right now, one particular book that I'm reading, my manual right now, The Great Cosmic Mother, 1987, Monica Skoo. Maybe it's Shu, actually. It's one of those, I think J is that's J-O-O with a double umlaut. I think it's Shu, Monica Shu, not Skoo, Shu. 1987, so this is that era of the readings that I'm doing at the moment, rediscovering the religion of the earth. So I've made it all the way through all of the goddess section, and now we're in the patriarchy section. And gosh, it's so interesting of how this male god concept was developed, what it was in response to, like how it had to craft itself as a counter narrative to the great goddess and invent Satan. And I was like, wow, that's so interesting because I've really been using a lot of Satan language lately. So I was like, I want to call this into the conversation. I don't think that was like a wrong thing, but now we can make it even like a bigger thing of, oh, that construct is part of the civilizational model that is coming to its end. And yeah, we will also have to liberate ourselves from these concepts, and how in the great goddess spirituality, I don't really think it was so much of a religion, but according to how we define religions, we would say it was a religion also, but it was, religio-spiritual practice of the people globally, like everybody, you know, the first male god didn't have Satan counterpart. So there's a whole era called the Bronze Age where there was the parallel matriarchies and patriarchies. And that was like the slow displacement of the goddess. And I've talked about parallel matriarchies and patriarchies in terms of South Asian Shakta Tantras and things like this. And that is true, for there. We're over in like Mesopotamia, you know, Tigris and Euphrates River Valley, like where the Western, cradle of civilization thing is happening. The shift to agrarian, the cultivation of the wheat, grain, not hunter-gatherer, forest stewardship anymore. We're going to shift to this grain-based diet thing, which doesn't serve us. It's all connected, right? And so in that Bronze Age, Bronze Age is also you can see this exact storyline just in the case study of Upper and Lower Egypt. So the Nubia and the dark goddess, and then all of a sudden you get like Horus, and like Osiris and Ra, and it's like, no, Isis. They're starting to get displaced, and the cults, if you will, as the scholars name it, are changing. And you have a little crossover period, and that's that Bronze Age, to put it in the Western calendar count. And you had matriarchy and patriarchy, so mother, goddess, and sky god. And then they invent Satan to be the opposition of sky god and then associate everything with the goddess with Satan. And that's the program we're under. And so every time I come back to these lands where I am right now, I get it a little bit more and a little bit more. And this time has really been very enriching. Also, the spirits of the land here have been so generous. And they're like, why don't you move here? And it's been really funny because everywhere we've gone lately, the spirits of the land are like, why don't you move here? I said, hey, make it happen, y'all. You know? you know? And they've just been so loving and so generous, and they're so excited about this work, and they love these spaces also. They're really supportive of all of this. They're like, we like it all. So thank you for the vote of confidence. We like it too. Oh, and so this is where our healing lives, is in this revival, this bringing this voice back through all of us, through our intuitive gifts, through our capacities. I'm moving beyond the binaries. That's the thing about this important storytelling of God and Satan, that it was a totally contrived binary. Sky God didn't even start out Sky God versus Satan, but they had to come up with a way to disempower the goddess practice and connection. And so this land where I am right now, there's so much of the karmic weave here. There is the genocide imprint of sky god displacing the goddess here. And then the Romans, displacing the Celts, and then the kings and the church. And at every turn was the brutality towards the medicine keepers, the ritual keepers, the midwives, the medicine people, and the practitioners of the goddess. And so my friend and colleague here, Uma Dinsmore Tuli, one of her opening prayers always includes, and let us acknowledge that we are free to gather, that what we are doing is legal, that we cannot be legally persecuted for reviving this connection to this consciousness, our ancient ancestral spiritual consciousness, she is self-fertilize and self-realize. She is non-binary. It's all in there. Like, pow. And this is the first time that I got it. I was like, oh, that's a nice sentiment, but I hadn't really steeped enough, surrendered enough into the memory, the ancestral memories here, and this collaging that I'm doing through clearly what is my life's work. Because I don't see that it's gonna have an end. And I can see that it's from the beginning. So like this, what I am truly just feeling the dedication to is collaging this back together for the sake of our future ancestors. That it is profound that we can gather, that we can speak in this way, that we can do these practices. I didn't get it before, you know. I'm not going to apologize or anything for that. That's just my own, ignorance and now the illumination of knowledge. So we need to be cool with that, that like what you don't know is what you don't know. What you don't understand is what you don't understand. But just keep going. Keep following it. Keep being led because we might come to really amazing things. So I'm back on this astrology, right? There's, I said it in the last moon circle as well, that there's these upcoming indicators of like new spiritual movements. Yeah. And I get really excited by that. Now, that does also mean because we're stuck in binaries, whatever comes up on like the cool end, the fundamental end is also going to come up with its shit. So there isn't going to be some like rosy love and light kind of thing, or we're going to see some very extreme. And that's always been there in this civilizational construct, this kind of sect, this fervor, self-harm, constriction. Oh yeah, that's not going to go anywhere because like this binary construct is not going to disappear overnight. So that's going to take some time. We're like in a like 5,000 year thing. I don't know. But we can tug on these ancestral threads and we are bolstered and supported by the ancestors and the guides and the protectors and the lineage spirits and the essences of things and by the whole of nature, by the clouds and the mountains and the rivers and the soil, the creepy crawlers and everything in between. We are wildly supported in this effort because this is our naturality. So I don't know, is this a spiritual movement that's, the return of our naturality? Sounds good to me, you know? Okay, let that. But this is so much about our liberation from the chokehold of the binaries. It is definitely about that. This is about the true and actual oneness, not the punishing God, or the sinful human, or the disdain for the body with the womb space. What kind of fakakta sense does that make? So yeah, sign me up. To be a part of whatever new on the cool end. I mean the cool team. Yeah, yeah. And two, maybe even three of these big influences are these upcoming transits. So May 18th or May 29th kind of depends on there's two measurements in terms of the transits of the nodes of the moon, Rahu and Ketu, the true node system and the mean node system, but whatever, it's like a handful of days apart and it's a 1.5 year transit. So for me, close enough. May 18th, May 29th, then and around there, certainly by the end of May, the impact shall be felt. But the nodes are changing signs. The nodes are the north and south nodes of the moon. And what they represent is like the dragon that eats the moon at the eclipse. So Rahu Ketu are the inspirations for eclipse. They were little devilish creatures, little asuras, little demigods that really wanted to be planets, grahas, the celestials, and they tried to sneak into Vishnu's court. And one of them found a way in, and he got his head in and was like feeling the wind, like, I'm gonna be a planet. So the saturation of desire. And somebody alerted Vishnu, and Vishnu threw his discus and chopped off the demon's head. And so you've got a head with no body and a body with no head. Rahu, insatiable desire. Ketu, disillusionment, or the disillusionment necessary for the spiritual journey. Ketu is a deeply spiritual planet, like that. So when they change sides, we're going to get a whole flavor 1.5 years wherever they are in your chart, and then also for the masses. So in your chart, you guys are going to have to see. So there's going to be sidereal Leo for Ketu and sidereal Capricorn. Sorry, Aquarius, the other Saturn sign, Aquarius for Rahu. Rahu has just been in a wild time, Rahu Saturn conjunction that has been very intense for us, kind of since almost mid-March until this end of May vibe. So hang in there if it's been real rocky for you. And what is causing is incredible anxiety. I know my poor anxiety is off the chart. And I can feel because this transit is almost done. I'm voting for May 18th, It's almost done and it is coming down. But goodness gracious, there's been some sustained weeks of very intense. Had to really be on my meditation and exercise and all the good nutrition, all the things. I found out in one of my astrology classes recently that Rahu is connected to alcohol. And when you stop drinking alcohol, you immediately pacify Rahu. And I was like, ooh, I want to because I stopped drinking in really the last drink I had was in May of last year. So it's been a year now. And that was when Rahu started the transit in sidereal. No, not started. That would have been a little bit. That was like November or December then. But I had already started turning the tap off. I had one glass of champagne in January and a couple glasses of rosé in May. That was it, kind of thing. And so it really does actually my stopping drinking alcohol does totally align with something I experienced called my nodal reversal. So Rahu is going over where natal Ketu is in the chart, and it is a 1.5 year period of epic eclipse. Things clipped in, things clipped out. That which is no longer necessary for you, clipped out. New things that are necessary, clipped in. It's harsh, it's intense. And I could see the landscape of the 17.5 months that I just passed, and I was just like, whoa, that was a lot. Okay. Thank you. See you in 18 years. And so Rahu is then had this huge, big party in sidereal Pisces. Rahu's going to be shifting out, and it's going to be a big effect for the masses as well. Because Rahu in Aquarius is going to give us new social movement. Aquarius is the place of society and the masses. And so there should be a movement around social justice, pushback from the people, and all this craziness that's going on with the politics and the government, new technology. Very exciting and very passionate. Where's it landing for you? You got to see about me, it's 10th house. Let's go. Career. We got to keep working. Let's go. And then where's Ketu going? Because that's going to get a little nebulous over there, wherever Ketu is showing. Ketu in Leo. You have to see, but those themes are going to be a lot about leadership. Leo, the sun, ruled by the sun, the leader, the lion, you know. So we'll have to see um, what how global leadership is challenged and what shifts and what the people are going to drive. Next 1.5 years from end of May should be pretty interesting in that regard. Who else is shifting signs? Faster moving planets. Mercury, Venus. Mercury is currently in sidereal Aries. Sometimes I get stuff wrong. But yeah, Mercury has definitely pushed on out of Pisces a while ago as in sidereal Aries and should be shifting into sidereal Taurus. Because yeah, it's Taurus season. So Mercury's going to shift in there. Venus is going to shift into sidereal Taurus, which is lovely, ruled by Venus. And then Sun on the 14th of May, so just a couple days, is also going to shift into sidereal Taurus. So we're going to get a lot of, Taurian themes, beauty, but also food, nourishment, artistry, aesthetics, and artistry of life like this. Jupiter is leaving sidereal Taurus on the 14th. So you see, today's the 12th. It's about to pop off this week, And Jupiter. Now, this is major because this is a slower moving planet. This is a 1-year transit, usually, but not this time. Jupiter is going steroidal. Jupiter is going to pass through 3 signs during its transit. So it's going to speed up Jupiter's expansion, philosophy, dharma, and it is about to get like kind of crazy. It's going to fly through Gemini, sidereal Gemini in like 6 months, and it's going to hit sidereal Cancer and sidereal Leo. So that we will see on the global stage as well. It's going to be very intense. This whole like war, social upheaval, if you follow any of the news, like the teams keep changing. Who's on what team, and while Trump is out here doing God knows what to the economy of the United States, China and Russia, honestly, also India, they are just waiting for their moves. India's playing a different game, kind of on a regional thing, and it's also stuck in its own cyclic karma with Pakistan and throwing bombs at each other and all the things, acts of terrorism and freedom fights in Kashmir, and just like that's super ongoing. That's like a wound, like an ulcerated wound that just simply has never healed since partition, since Indian independence, 1947. And that's a big long story. But India wants a piece of that global pie. And India is running a fundamentalist government. They're on this new style of thing, along with the current administration of the US government, the administration of England. Oh, yeah, it's a bigger game, people. But it's a global game. China, Russia, they're playing a hard global game at the moment. And they know that Africa is the future. And they're like all up in there. And so it feels almost like Game of Thrones, at the moment of the like the opening sequence with all the like movement and the constant shifting like this. Yeah, it's a bit like that. No other part of that metaphor, but just the opening sequence and all the moving and the kind of gears and the plotting and the like alliances and then not alliances, and then you got like a sort of rogue businessman, a shitty one at that, who's doing rogue businessman-y things, but he's just gonna drive the business of America into the ground because he's not a good businessman. And in the meantime, the vultures, the technocrats, are just doing exactly what they want to do. which is to move America towards a technocracy. So if any sci-fi movie you've ever watched about the company, like, yeah, that's their MO, so oh, it's quite a moment, so the people do need to find, you know, their guts and do something. It's still a representative democracy. How are we going to, are you just going to lay down and let whatever happen happens? Then what does that mean? Right. But I think all of that, while we're just on this tangent, because we haven't been talking about this too much. This is really the first time I'm like even naming it, to be honest with you. But there's still a lot of what ifs. Democracy, what ifs, something called rights, what ifs, power, as an element. And the will of the people is not clear. And so the little bit of handful that realize that they can manipulate the system to their own personal gain, that's what they're out there doing. There's no future plan here. There's no long-term plan. But they've made a nice, scary narrative to make you think that there's a long-term plan, but there actually isn't one. There are layers within the realm of the people who hold power globally. And there is a concept of a new world order, you know. And new world order doesn't have to be evil. New world order doesn't have to be exploitative. Like a reordering and a refreshing of the democratic experiment and the social contract, we can be due for that. But I don't think it's going to land, well if it's coming from this very, very broken, partial constriction of binaries place. There's not much to talk about it at this point in time because it's not formed. But the non-participation in governance is a huge problem. So even if people got out there and protested, if people got out there and tried to utilize the system as it exists right now, like really the only venue that's open at the moment is open and working is the judicial, the courts. It's like the democracy is hanging together because it ain't the legislation. And it sure as hell ain't our executive branch. That's Gotham City, you know. And the legislation is bought by big business. The whole democracy, and it's not hanging on the people because people aren't participating. The majority of the people, right? Half of the nation doesn't vote. The majority of the people don't participate. They don't even know how the government works. That's intentional, right? And so where we're left with is really the democracy is hanging on a thread called the courts system. It's a big stress test. There's not much more to talk about than that. This is kind of like where we're at, like update, like checking in. This is where we're still at. Yep, this is where we're still at. So the legislation is still, just full of jokers that are self-interested, and the executive is still Gotham City. And you can go into any of these major player countries that I named, you'll find the same exact thing is going on. Yes. So what are we focused on? What should we be focused on? Well, at this beautiful, beautiful moon, we are supposed to be in the like collective magic of it all, the Six of Swords. We are supposed to be in our like ability to fly and form and heal and unite and celebrate and express like that, like that's what we're supposed to be in. So let me read to you for a moment about oh, so yeah, last little thread was that the upcoming Jupiter transit will also play into like a, a next wave spirituality, a surging forward, something exciting. Let's hold hope for the very positive of that. Okay, so rooting it down into this moon, this nakshatra, Vishaka nakshatra, and it's in Libra, and that is ruled by Venus, and Vishaka is ruled by Jupiter. So that's fun and exciting and expansive and blessed, very benefic. Its primary motivation is dharma, and has a secondary motivation of sattva or harmony. There's a unique feature of this asterism, and that is that it has two Vedic deities associated with it: Indra, the lord of the gods, and Agni, the god of fire. So, okay, let's see where that takes us. The symbol is the potter's wheel. Sometimes in ancient texts, it's also indicated by an archway. And believe it or not, in this zone, Saturn is exalted. Saturn is very happy associated with Venus. And Saturn's okay in Pisces also, even though Saturn and Jupiter aren't so much friends. Vishaka stands for transformation. The manifesting soul has already been individualized, and under Swati's radiation has achieved a self-perpetuating metabolism. The Vishaka phase makes the individual look forward to discover what lies within them. It arouses the urge to change in order to achieve something which is not entirely known. So often this is like fork in the road, like you pick one, kind of thing. Like what's the thing that needs to change and where do you want to go? That kind of vibe. The beginning of spirituality and the urge to move towards the source of existence or divine origin of things occurs under this asterism. A kind of spiritual discontent or dissatisfaction with the existing conditions of life, restlessness in the personal life, and a great psychological turmoil are some of the main characteristics of Vishaka. Such an impulse often, okay, that's within a person, but no. Like if you're born under this star. Okay. This kind of turmoil is represented by the potter's wheel. Vishaka has inertia as its guiding impulse, and harmony is the foundation on which this impulse acts. As a result of these attributes, intense activity occurs on a physical level. Such complex forces act on the person because tamas is the primary attribute of the asterism, sattva is the secondary, and rajas the tertiary attribute. In a potter's wheel, the central axis around which the wheel rotates is almost stationary. There is no apparent movement at that point. The greater the proximity to the center, the less movement. Tamas is that attribute which desires no change in the existing condition, which is what the center of the wheel represents. I would definitely say the American public is very tamasic in terms of their politics right now. Remain wherever you are, whatever else happens, exert no will of your own. This is where the clay to be shaped is put. Harmony prevails by conforming to the will of God, or the divine, or by surrendering to the impulse generated by nature. The clay does not resist. The shape visualized in the potter's mind is gradually imprinted on the clay by the wheel, which works according to the potter's fingers. Under Vishaka, the divine will arouses the urge to explore one's inner self, one's real nature, which, however, arouses dissatisfaction with its existing state and urges the person to act in order to transform oneself. The potter's wheel is, as a symbol, is commonly found in the Vedantic literature. The cosmos itself is compared to it. Within this field, the crystallized coral that contains within itself the vibrating divine life is shaped into different forms and sizes according to the archetype in the potter's mind. Every impetus, whether external or internal, is a part of the cosmos which operates according to the divine design in the creator's mind, the Mahat of Vedic philosophy. Under this impulse of this asterism, individual genius finds expression, its main impelling force being the externalization of that which is within. It leads to a radical transformation. This transformation, however, is according to a plan, a design. The individual performs their design duty or responsibility in the cosmic drama. But this takes place at a tremendous sacrifice of personal pleasure and convenience. One may remember that this asterism is owned by two deities, Indra, the god of luxury and sensuous enjoyment, and Agni, the god of penance, under whose influence the dross is burnt out completely. With a new beginning, the process of transformation occurs in numerous ways. The shape of the clay is also fashioned in many forms depending on the potter's objective. The potter's mind and the role of the presiding deity, Agni, are identical in many ways. The potter's mind can be better understood by examining the nature of Agni as given in classical literature. There are many kinds of fire, but 7 are identified as the main ones. These 7 are the 7 flames, which are the 7 human temperaments, or 7 channels on whose current the seeds of manifestation are carried through the different planes of existence. The one supreme principle becomes actively energized under this impulse. The dual ownership of the asterism by Indra and Agni implies that the course of evolution can be either on the path of materialization, on which one gets all the luxuries in life, or on the path of spiritualization, where all kinds of deprivations have to be met. The two function within one primary force, that of tapas or asceticism, the process of destroying the non-essential. The archway, another symbol given to Vishaka, marks the transit from one place to another. In this illusion, the focus is not on the material, the clay, which is fashioned on the wheel, but on the living entity, the person on the pilgrimage. Passing through an archway indicates the entrance to a sacred or important place. When Vishaka affects any aspect of one's life, it must move it towards its inherent goal, the shrine of one's true nature. The onward movement under such an impulse entails important changes. Generally, it is observed that the person affected by Vishaka becomes austere, hard-boiled, detached, and such changes, which result from the burning away of lower passions, as happiness in the case of yogis performing tapas. In everyday life, one notices its influence as a feeling of uneasiness, not the usual happiness that occurs during, the usual unhappiness that occurs during periods of psychological stress, but a feeling of vague disillusionment with the superficial experiences of the pleasures and happiness of life. Oh, this one goes on forever. The basic nature of Vishaka is revealed by its very name. The word derives from the word which means readiness, like the attentive preparedness for shooting an arrow. It is readiness when the archer keeps his feet apart, holds the bow, stretches the cord holding the arrow, aiming at the target, but not yet deciding to shoot. This asterism itself covers primarily the sign of Libra, but towards its later part extends into Scorpio, which provides the preparatory impulse to enable the soul to receive the radical transformation under Sagittarius, which has the shooting centaur as its symbol. Basically, Vishaka is the asterism where the necessary attention of the archer is turned towards the butt of the arrow. This asterism prepares the individual for the forthcoming change which takes place under Sagittarius. For this purpose, Vishaka induces a change in attitude. The clay under the potter's wheel only changes form while it still remains clay and retains its inherent material nature. Only under Sagittarius radical transformation of the whole being occurs, It is then, only then, that the horse becomes a human being, that the person motivated by physical propensities and emotional passion becomes a conscious individual. This emphasis, the role of Vishaka as a preparatory stage. Under it, the psychological orientation needed for spiritual change in life begins to take place. There's a lot there. I feel like the strongest thread that we've already been talking about really is like this beautiful spiritual collage, like the product of globalization, of all of the people moving and exchanging ideas, the internet, new technology. Humans will derive deeper understandings of spirituality as they have always throughout long history and her story. And that will be because they need to. We were cool with the great goddess for a really, really, really long time, but some humans weren't comfortable in that comfort. And they wanted something different, something that they could feel like they could enact control over. And that's the construct that we're stuck in, living out the last days of in the intermediary between. But we can't get to the next promise of the spiritual illumination as a collective without going back over what was and the telling of this story of how we got here. And that story is a decolonial act. And it will take many, many, many decolonial acts on individual, objective, and collective levels to collage that story. But it is the factors of globalization that is even enabling this to happen. So, what a paradox. And the only way to navigate a paradox is to sit in it and be moved by its dynamism. And I put the card away, but that's the Six of Swords. It's very dynamic. Those people are flying. They are like channeling and flying and moving beyond the confines of the law of gravity. They're in their superpowers. They're in what our ancestors were able to do that today for us is just the fodder of stories and movie lines or storylines and movies like this. So, I mean, the question has to be, for each of us as individuals of like, what are you hearing the call towards in terms of your spiritual practice and development? And cut out a thing or two that are preventing that from coming into the center space and bring that effort forward. That's the thing to be focusing on. If you then look at where is Vishaka Nakshatra, where is Libra in your chart, that'll give you some clues. That house will give you some clues as to themes that you will be, that will come up for you personally, like that. So I'm going to pause this giant download share here and be in just very deep gratitude for these great wisdom traditions and these lineages of folks that have come before us and done, made these capsules. This author in particular of this book, Monica Shu, she was persecuted for her work. And whatever was in her karma, both of her children died while she was still alive. And she died an absolute pauper, like in houselessness, and so may her spirit and any of these other, lineage holders that we are benefiting from their documentation and their work in this time in our collaging, may their spirits be uplifted. May they find their karmic upliftment and karmic completion, even through their sufferings, just as we are. We are in their inheritance. I don't want to say debt. We're in their abundance. We're in their inheritance. So I'm gonna pause it here.